All right. How's everybody doing today? Thank you guys for joining us for our Business and Entrepreneur Development Committee meeting today. And we want to thank Miss Cheryl in the chamber for working all of her magic behind the scenes. Thank you very much. And Cheryl, as we go about this meeting, if you'll just kind of stay in contact with me, because I can't see what's going on Facebook as much. So if we have questions coming in or things like that, if you will please just let me know. Cheryl, would you like to go over? Go ahead.
I was going to say, can I post the questions in chat to you so you can go ahead and relay them to our panelists?
Yep, that would be great. That would be great. And also, I do know that we have a message that we need to post on the Facebook since we will be talking about legal topics. Did you get that, Cheryl? If not, I can send it to you. And if you'll just post that online, maybe in the comment section, just so they'll know, and we'll read that statement here shortly as well.
Was it sent by Miss LaMonica?
Yes.
Then I'll post that right this second.
Okay, perfect. And would you like to go over, Cheryl, the safety procedures and conflict of interest? I know you have that on our agenda for today.
I do. So as part of the chamber, we want everybody to be safe. Since you're all still at home at this point, just please know your exits and how to get out of your house as safe as possible. The other thing is we have a business conduct policy we follow here at the chamber, and we feel very strongly about it. Last month's lesson was don't do anything you don't want to talk about on the 6 o'clock news, which I think sums it up beautifully in general. But today's lesson was you don't want to be coercive or collusive or do anything for improper gain. And I think that those were all a nice lesson, a bit more about the ethics of business. So that's what I've got on that, Kiana.
All righty. Thank you very much. Okay, before we get started, I will read. Is it okay for our attorneys? Can we read the statement or does it need to be read by one of the attorneys? I can read it. Okay, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and read the statement since we're going to be talking about legal topics, and then we'll get into introductions because I want to make sure that we do not forget this. So today we're going to have a topic on business law, and on our panel, we will have three business attorneys, and they wanted to make sure that we let you guys know that the information in this video is for informational purposes only and is not legal advice. Use of this presentation does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and any of the attorneys on the panel. You should not act upon the information within this video without seeking advice from a lawyer licensed in your own state or country. You should not send any confidential information to any of the attorneys on this panel until and unless a formal lawyer-client relationship has been established in writing. Unless you have received such written confirmation, we will not consider any correspondence you send us as confidential. All righty, so now that we got that out of the way, let's get to a few introductions. So we want to introduce who we have online, excluding our attorneys, because we will get to our attorneys. So let's start with you, Ms. Cheryl.
Good morning. My name is Cheryl Kepp. I'm the Senior Vice President here at the Pearland Chamber of Commerce. And I can't wait to hear this presentation because I heard law was going to be fun today.
Law's always fun. Okay, and we have our beloved Miss Carol.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday and happy spring. We're very excited about seeing beautiful green trees and grass and beautiful flowers. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. And then we have Tony on.
Hi, good morning. I'm Tony Vale. I am Vice President here at the Chamber. I'm new to the team and new to this committee, but very excited to be a part of it and learn and grow with you guys.
Very nice to meet you. I haven't met you yet. That's exciting to hear. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I see we have Morgan on. I don't know if she's able to come off mute.
Yes. Hi.
Hey, Morgan.
Hello, I am with Kiana. I am new to Friendly Faces, her company, and I am the new community relations manager in the medical center territory. So I'm happy to be on today, joining you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. And then we got Miss Brianne.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I am Brianne Salcedo, the proud owner of Action Coach Pearland and Action Coach Friendswood, and excited to be here with you all today. And Kiana and I have been working really hard to put together our entire, I know last month we talked about planning the entire year to give the community and entrepreneurs and business owners so many resources through this committee. So excited to be here.
And Brianne is our co-chair of our business and entrepreneurship committee. And if you guys don't know me, my name is Kiana James. I am on the executive board of the Pearland Chamber, and I'm the vice chair of the business development committee. I am the proud owner of Friendly Faces Senior Care. And what we do is we provide caregiving services for seniors wherever it is that they live. And I am a proud resident of the Pearland community. So just very, very happy to be joining with you guys today. And we're going to go ahead and get started because we have a lot of topics to go over with our attorneys. President of the Pearland community.
We also have Shobi on.
Oh, Shelby's on. Joining with you guys today. And we're going to go ahead and get
Got a lot of echo. Hi, guys. This is Shobi Raj, and I am an ambassador for the awesome chamber, and also I market the Legal Shield services. I'm really excited about this topic. So up my alley. So looking forward to it. Thanks for putting it together, Kiana and Brianne.
And thank you, Shobi, for reaching out to Brian. They worked together and getting him on our panel. We really, really appreciate it. And I see a Joshua. I'm not for certain who that is. Hi, Joshua. Oh,
I think you know who I am.
Hey, Josh.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Joshua Hari with Space Center Systems. I do manage IT and infrastructure throughout the Houston area, and excited to see what you guys have going on and educating us today, especially being a small business owner. I think is very useful.
Yeah, and I definitely, on that note, want to say thank you for our attorneys. We know your time is valuable. We know you normally get paid for your time by the hour. And so we appreciate you taking out the time. One of the things we want to do with this business and entrepreneurship committee is really provide valuable resources for the people in the community, in the Pearland community and beyond. We know that we are still in a pandemic and we had a very hard year, 2020. There's a lot of businesses that are suffering. There's a lot of businesses that are trying to bounce back and bounce forward. And so you guys being able to volunteer your time is just so valuable and so very, very much appreciated. So we definitely want to say thank you. So before we start with our question and answers, we're going to stump our lawyers, our attorneys. Let's do a little bit of introduction. So we're going to start first with our very own Pearland Chamber member, Mark Smith. Would you give an introduction of yourself?
Thank you, Kiana. Appreciate it. Appreciate y'all inviting me on. My name is Mark Smith. I'm a Pearland resident. Been here since 1973 when my parents moved out here. As Kiana said, I'm on the chamber board, been involved with the chamber for 5 or 6 years now, and been practicing, I always sigh when I say this now, almost 22 years. Been representing small businesses for about 18 years of that. And I really enjoy working with entrepreneurs. It's always been a lot of positive energy when I meet with people that are wanting to form their own business. And so it's definitely a passion of mine, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
And might I ask, and I'll ask this of each of our attorneys, how did you get into that line of work, or what made you want to do that and that specific type of law that you practice?
Well, and this is what I tell my new clients when they come in. I remember very vividly doodling the logo for my own company when I was in the 4th grade. Really wish I would have kept those now that I have that story, but I've always had an entrepreneur's heart. I've always wanted to own my own business at some point, and it just kind of fell into it in a way, but I always knew that I wanted to get into this type of work. So
I think that's awesome. You really have that entrepreneurial spirit. I too, at the age of 8, knew I wanted to get into entrepreneurship. Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Okay, we want to move on to Miss LaMonica Love. If you would just let us know who you are, where you're from, and how did you get into what it is that you do and what you specialize.
Okay. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. I'm LaMonica Love, and I'm a business and real estate attorney. My practice is located in Houston, but I am a Pearland resident. I'm a native Houstonian, but I've been living in Pearland for 8 years. My kids attend school in Alvin ISD, and so I just love it and very happy to be a part of the community. I got into my area of law because I previously practiced law at a corporation and saw that there was a need for business attorneys for small to medium-sized businesses. The skill set, and the other 2 attorneys who are on the panel will definitely be able to kind of have insight on this, on reading, negotiating contracts, doing those types of things is definitely something that is extremely important to business owners, but sometimes it's not accessible because of the price point, because they may not be able to afford someone at a big firm. And so my practice really just came out of necessity because I was helping so many individuals while who would come to me and ask me for advice or want to know how to negotiate a commercial lease or draft their company agreement. And finally, I said, I'm doing so much of this with helping people. I'm going to bet on myself and start my own law firm, building and talking to people about the things that I know best. And so that's how I started my business. I've been on my own now for 5 years. It's been amazing. I've been practicing for 13 years and just excited to help business owners, help them provide for their families. Ultimately, that's what we're doing when we're helping small business owners and entrepreneurs, helping them change the trajectory of their family and provide for their communities.
Thank you so much, and great to hear that you're native here or live in our Pearland community. And I know LaMonica has helped me out with my business quite a bit, so thank you very much. I really much appreciate it. And then next, we'd like to have Mr. Brian Ross.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I am the only non-Houstonian / Pearlandian on the board, so I know my place, but I'm from Texas, and we've been practicing here we've been in operation since 1990. And I'm a friend of Shobi's, and our firm services Legal Shield plans, which has a small business plan that we service statewide. So I do have a lot of plan holders in the greater Houston metro area who we help out. And like Mark and LaMonica mentioned, lawyers, we're problem identifiers. We're really good at pointing things out that are wrong. But one of the things that's a real joy for me with working with business people is how energetic and excited they are. And they're like horses just chomping at the bit, ready to go. And but they need guidance. Like she said, they need guidance along the way with agreements, with forks in the road. And it's a pleasure to be able to help them out. It's a real treat because in the end, business is what, the business of America is business. And I'm glad to help out, glad to be here.
Absolutely. That fuels everything we do within our country. I've reached out to y'all's office, and I'm friends with Shobi, and you guys have helped me quite a bit. So I appreciate the whole Legal Shield system as well. Thank you so much. All righty. We are going to move on to our questions. And the way this is going to work, we're going to pose a question. And if any attorney wants to volunteer to speak first, that's fine. But we'll get the perspective from each attorney. We know they're very diverse backgrounds, so that's very, very good. And we just want to have this as a discussion, panel discussion. So feel free to jump in and add any additions. So our first question is, and this is going to really be for those businesses that are really getting started or maybe might need to change some things, because I remember when I was starting, I did not do what you should do, and I'm going to recommend you should consult with an attorney and hire a consultant when you're starting a business. It's very hard when you try to do things on your own. And so this was something that I had to just research, but it would have been much helpful had I just hired an attorney and got a specialized answer on how I should handle this. So this question is, what business structure should one choose? So I'm a new business. I see all of this about sole proprietorship, partnership, LLC, C Corp, S Corp. What should I do? Who would like to go first? I'm going to call on Mark. You're looking at me.
That's not a problem. So I don't know about LaMonica or Brian, but when people typically ask me a question like that, the normal lawyer answer is it depends. And that's a shtick that a lot of lawyers use. So the reason it depends, there's so many factors on business structure and how you want to operate, how you want to be taxed, and really kind of your end goal with the business. Do you have an exit strategy? Are you developing the business to sell it in 5 years? Because that may affect your business structure in a lot of ways. Just to kind of give you an example, if it's a typical solo, somebody wanting to come in just to incorporate, most of the time I'm going to recommend an LLC. And the reason for that is kind of takes the best parts of a partnership and the best parts of a corporation and merges them together. And by that, I mean, from the tax aspect, it's a pass-through organization. So all of the taxes pass through the LLC to the individual owners or owner, if it's just a single. And you avoid the double taxation that you would get in more of like a traditional corporation with like a IBM or Exxon or one of those. So that's kind of the typical. Flip side of that, though, is if somebody comes in and they have a mind that they're going to want to build up a business, they think it's a great idea, but they don't want to do it for the rest of their lives. Maybe they are going to want to do a C Corp. And the reason for that is most institutional, big businesses, institutional investors, that sort of thing, they love a C Corp because it's been around for 500-600 years. It's just everybody's used to it at that level. They know how to operate. They know how the taxes are going to work. They know how all of the shareholder agreements work. Any disputes among the shareholders, the same issues probably come up 500 times over the last 100 years or so. So they're very comfortable with that structure. So again, that's kind of why it depends on what structure you want. The reason why an LLC works for a small business is because you don't have a whole lot of what I call corporate formalities. You don't have to have a shareholder meeting. You don't have to have bylaws. You don't have to have printed stock certificates. It's very flexible, but you also get all the protections of a corporation, and you get the pass through, the tax pass through. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Okay, great. Brian, I see you shaking your head a lot. You want to go next?
Well, there's not much to piggyback on because Mark pretty much nailed it. Most importantly is, you need, like you said yourself, you need to see an attorney first to figure out what's your best fit. What does your business do? How many people are involved? There's a lot of factors that go into it, but I was nodding my head because he's absolutely right in that, the LLC, it's not for every body and it's not for every business situation, but it was created with flexibility in mind. And there's a reason why they're so commonly used and so widely available, especially here. They're a very flexible business structure that is designed with small businesses in mind in particular. And more often than not, it's a commonly used one for a reason. That's what the head nod is for. So.
All right, and Miss LaMonica, I see you're in agreement there. What would you like to add?
The only thing that I'd like to add is that businesses just need to understand the difference between the legal status and the tax status. So I agree with everything that Brian and Mark have said about the businesses, but when people start to say that they want to create an S Corp or they want to create, an LLC can be taxed as as an S Corp. So you just have to be careful with understanding that your tax status and your legal status are two separate things. So understanding that for a business owner is extremely important.
So would you say in that, would you recommend then maybe coordinating your CPA with your lawyer or something?
Oh, I absolutely agree.
Okay. That's interesting. That's interesting. Anybody want to comment on what can be some of the dangers with like a sole thing or not really incorporating?
Yeah, well, I'll take the lead on that, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, so the biggest thing about forming a corporation, any form, whether it's an LLC, corporation, whatever, is what I call the liability shield. And what that means is that the individual owners of the company are protected if the company does something wrong. That is not the case if you're just a sole proprietor. So if you just go out and get a assumed name, a DBA with the county and start doing your plumbing business, all of your personal assets are at stake if something goes wrong. And hopefully nothing goes wrong, but that, there's a reason why you should incorporate. Now, that said, Texas has quite a few protections for individuals from a judgment, but I would always recommend spending the $300 on incorporating, whether it's an LLC or whatever, just for that extra layer of protection. So nobody files a lien against your house or anything like that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Lamont.
I was going to say, I'll also add one thing that I see with serial entrepreneurs or individuals who create multiple businesses is that they will set up an LLC for one purpose. They have a commercial insurance that covers them for one purpose. And then they're going out and buying real estate and they're putting it under the same name as their, LLC that they're using for their truck driving business. And so you want to be very careful about using your business for different purposes, specifically if it's not going to be covered under your commercial general liability insurance and mixing liability. So that is the biggest thing that I want to say, because people will think, oh, I have an LLC, I'll just go out and get a DBA for all the different things that I'm doing under my LLC. That's also a red flag that you want to be very careful about, especially if one of the business entities are extremely profitable and you're taking on another risk that is not as profitable.
Thank you for bringing that out. I think we've had discussions about that, and that's why it's so important. And people in Facebook world and chamber, please hire an attorney. It gets really complicated very, very fast, and most of us are not experts when it comes to this. I'm a big believer in going to the experts because you either pay now or you pay later, and it's better to pay now than to do something wrong and get in trouble and pay later. So definitely thank you guys. Okay, we're going to go and move on to our next question. Our next question is, what are the initial items one should focus on when first working with a business attorney to protect and set up my business correctly? I'm going to start with LaMonica. What are your thoughts on that?
So, I'm going to say the standard things of just, setting up your business with the correct legal entity, ensuring that you have insurance, ensuring that you're completely covered, making sure that you have agreements. But the thing that I think is the most important for clients is to really be transparent with their attorney. Most of the time, what are their concerns? What are the risks? what are some of the challenges that they're going to face, because that's going to allow us to look at your business and be sure that we are protecting you, that we are putting things in place to give you guidance on how you should, handle your employees. Most things when it comes to company agreements, the things that we're going to do when we set up your business are going to be pretty standard, but it's going to be the thing that's going to make the difference is clients being very forthcoming about their intent and their goals for the business, and also the risk or the concerns that they are worried about.
Thank you. Would anyone like to add anything to that?
Just real quickly, I couldn't agree more. The only thing I was going to add to it was, first and foremost, going to your lawyer is a lot like going to your doctor. She couldn't be more correct in that you really need to be transparent. A lot of times what will happen is I'll get somebody who'll come into my office and they'll start talking, and I'll start to piece together that I'm really not getting the full picture. I'm only getting bits and pieces of it. And it's just human nature. It's you want to present things in the best light possible, but we can't, just like your doctor, we can't help you if we don't know the whole story. So I highly recommend the transparency. And the only thing I was going to mention was, the attorney-client relationship can vary depending on what it is that you're coming to us to do. Are we setting up the formation? Let's say that there's 4 partners that are starting a business, but one comes to me aside and says, I want you to walk me through this relationship with my other partners and with the business. Our attorney-client relationship can vary. So but most importantly, above all, is just come in, be honest, lay it all on the table. It'll help you out best.
Brian, can I add something to that? Kiana, is that what I see with my clients that really are transparent, and it's kind of like waiting for that appointment for the doctor as well. Like you never said it. You feel like you don't need it. You don't need it. You don't need it. But the biggest benefit besides, decreasing the risk or the financial gains from having an attorney is I see a transition in mindset with peace of mind. Like people think it's going to be super uncomfortable to go to an attorney and get the truth. But after everything is taken care of, I see businesses able to grow so much differently because they have peace of mind.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer, and I don't always practice this, but this is where I try to move myself and being proactive and doing things ahead of time versus reactive. It just saves time, it saves money, and it saves headache and stress. So as many things as you can set up proactively is always going to be the best, especially for business owners. We're on the move. We have so much, weighing on us. Definitely want to be as proactive. Mark, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to piggyback off of what Brian said, and I'm definitely glad he mentioned kind of the partner scenario, is a lot of times you'll, get with friends or whatever, or people that and you say, okay, we're going to develop this business and it's going to be fantastic. And then you get into it and you realize, well, everybody has to work. And so some people have different ideas of what that work is going to be. And then that leads to frustration, whatever. So my thought being along those lines, and LaMonica mentioned it, the company agreement, a lot of people call it a partnership agreement, operating agreement, shareholder agreement, whatever. But that is your business prenuptial, because the attorney that's walking you through it should go through all of the kind of potential scenarios of what could go wrong and how you're going to preemptively take care of those situations. And a lot of times that's who's going to control the business. How is voting done if you have a contentious issue? So that to me is very, very important to think about before you get to your attorney. And that way the attorney can at least help you put pen to paper of exactly how you want to structure it.
Thank you so much for bringing that out. I think that's so important. I just want to reiterate that when you get ready to form a business, a lot of times people think, oh, it'll be fun. Oh, this is my best friend, or this is my love of mine, my relative. Let's just partner up. Let's do all these things. And you can become enemies when you have business. It's very important. In my religious background, we always talk about doing contracts because you want to make sure everything is spelled out, because you do things and you're emotional and you're happy about it, and everybody sees things and does things differently. And so it's so important from the beginning to have it written down and have an agreement. And when there is a dispute, because there will be, then you can go back, pull out the documents. Well, this is what we agreed to. You agreed to that. I agreed to this. That can help when trying to resolve those issues. But it's something you definitely just want to think about from the beginning, is know the type of person you are. I know me personally, I didn't get into partnerships. I'm a control freak. I know how I am. It's probably not going to work out very well. I didn't get a roommate either. I got married, surprisingly. I'm doing okay with that, but I know myself. So I knew it would probably not be a good idea. But that doesn't mean that's for everyone. There are plenty of people that are able to partner up and they do well and they have an understanding, but have it written down. So that's a very, very good point. Okay, we're going to move on. And that kind of flows into question 3, which is, what are some of the main contracts that businesses need? And if you'd like to start commenting on your thoughts, Brian.
Well, first and foremost, are the documents that you're going to need to form the business in the first place. If you have an LLC, you're going to need a company agreement. If you have multiple partners, you're going to need a buy-sell agreement. You're going to have the initial set of documents that you need to get things up and running. And then when you're starting a business, one of the things that shocked me is it's not so much that you're creating contracts as much as you are signing other people's contracts. You're signing lease agreements for commercial space, or at least you were before COVID. You're signing loan documents. You're signing a lot of personal guarantees in the beginning. And business people are always chomping at the bit to get started. So they're just signing everything that's in front of them without getting advice on what it is they're signing in the first place. And then after that, it just kind of depends on what the business is that you do. Do you have do you have outstanding bills? Do you collect? Do you have a security agreement? There's all kinds of documents that can come into play depending on what it is that, as far as what you send out and have other people sign, as far as what it is your business does.
All right. LaMonica and Mark.
Yeah, I would agree. I like to think of them as sort of internal agreements and then external agreements. So you're going to think about the internal agreements that kind of make your office function. So what are the things that have to do with you and you and other members or partners, or if you have a corporation, or if you have investors? One thing that I found that is so common now is that people, especially individuals that work in corporate America, they are investing so much in these entrepreneurs and investing in businesses. So they'll give $10,000, give lots of money to lots of, entrepreneurs, and they have no idea what that actually means. They don't know what it means to get quarterly distributions. They don't understand what it means to get paid. And they just assume that they're going to start getting all of this money back. And that's not the way that it works. So I think that is one of the biggest things that people need to understand is, if you're having all of these investors, then you probably should have a corporation and not an LLC. But that's sort of, taking us back to the first question. But I also think that you have to function exactly like you would, in your own personal space. When my husband and I first bought our first home, we knew that we were young, we didn't have lots of money. So we wanted to get a home that had a very good warranty. So we were like, if anything breaks for 2 years, we have a 2-year warranty. So we know that our builder is going to come out and fix it, and we don't have to pay a lump sum of money. Well, business owners don't think like that. So they go and sign commercial leases, and they're not looking at what the landlord is responsible for and what they're responsible for. They're not looking at the actual, status or the status of the air conditioner that's in this unit to make sure that it's going to last them for this 5 or 10-year lease. So I just think that you have to think of it the same way that you would manage your personal home and the things that you enter into contracts with when you think about your own life. So there's so many contracts that you're signing. Brian's absolutely right. Most of them are going to be with other people, with other businesses having you sign things. So just talk to an attorney and learn your business.
And I can't stress enough, understand what you're signing. As business owners, we're going 1,000 miles an hour. And I've gotten into contracts with vendors and didn't realize I was signed up for 3 years. Like, whoa, wait a minute, what? So you really, really got to understand and take that time to read. And if it's something very complex, I know I've sent them to attorneys before to have them reviewed. Mark, what did you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like Brian said, it runs the gamut and just really depends on the type of business as to what type of contracts you're going to want to generate. Definitely agree with LaMonica as well. I mean, you're going to get contracts the other way from, vendors or service providers or whoever that you need to review as well. So it's terms and conditions, service contracts, employment agreements, that sort of thing. Just kind of looking in anticipation of the next question. If you have, any sort of trade secrets or, proprietary customer lists and stuff like that, you're probably going to want a non-compete, non-solicitation with your employees. And I'm sure LaMonica and Brian have looked at a few of those. Those can be kind of tricky as to make them enforceable. So if you need something like that, that's definitely something you want to have an attorney go over with you, because if you don't time it correctly, you're not going to have an enforceable agreement. So.
Thank you. And that's what you're saying, Mark, that's very, very important. And a lot of times state specific is important, because I know when it comes to employee agreements in Texas, things are different. So you have to have it worded a certain way. It's not okay to just have a cookie cutter version. A lot of us will go online and just get these cookie cutter documents. And then when you try to enforce them, depending on the state, it's not written well. And so it's really not there as a protection for you. You really want a lawyer, attorney to go through it with a fine tooth comb and make those relevant suggestions on how things should be. All righty, so we're going to get into what Mark was saying. Our next topic is, how can I protect my intellectual property? Who would like to speak on that first? Brian?
Yes, no. Now, let me throw this caveat out there. I thought a lot about this question because I don't do IP work. Intellectual property work is a very sort of niche practice, but I did have an answer. A while back, I had some friends / clients who came to me and they wanted to start up a business, and it was a retail business. And without going into too much detail, they were very excited. They came up with their name, they came up with their logo. They asked me as a favor to, they wanted to set up an LLC like we discussed in question 1. It was the best for them. So sat down, did the company agreement, did the buy sell as a courtesy to them. But I told them, hey, before you start chomping at the bit, I could check with the Secretary of State and make sure that you're good to go on that level, but you need to consult with an IP attorney and really delve into this, because you've got this, like Mark said, you got a logo, you've got this plan, and you need to make sure that you got everything squared away. Well, they didn't, because human nature, I did the work for free. They didn't have a lot to begin with starting up. They didn't want to spend the money, understandably so. But as the company got more successful, they finally, that tension started building up, and they went to one of the guys that I referred them to here in Euless, actually, Tim, great IP lawyer. Met with him. He told him, hey, bad news, good news. Bad news, there's another company in another state that's pretty much got you beat to the punch. So you could theoretically be in trouble. The good news is that, knock on wood, that was years ago, and they have they have a rebranding strategy in place. They didn't have to dismantle everything. But if they had gone to an IP guy first, which goes back to the #1 overriding message that we're all throwing out here, go talk to your attorney, the right attorney first, get everything you need before you get started. And that's my 2 cents on question number 4.
I think I heard you said you do work for free.
I should have.
He said he learned a lesson. I think that's what he said.
Okay. LaMonica, what would you like to say on that? I know you and I have been working offline on that very subject.
The one thing that I will say, the first thing I'll say is that owning a domain name, owning an LLC, owning an Instagram name does not mean that you own your intellectual property. So that's going to be the first thing. So many times people are focusing on the outward things for a business, and I get it. We all want to look extremely official. When people come and search for us, we want our website to look great. But the last thing that you want to do is to build a brand on something that someone else is doing, is already using. And just because they are not using it in the way that that you are going to use it, or marketing it in the way that you would market, does not mean that it can't be enforced. We live in a global economy. So even filing, a lot, people are not filing trademarks with states anymore. We're only filing trademarks with the USPTO. And it's extremely important. The reason why it's important is because you're going to be able to license your trademark. You're going to be able to send cease and desist when people are not, and monetize it. So a trademark, a copyright, I'm not a patent attorney. Brian talked about having a niche practice as an intellectual property attorney. Well, when you start talking about a patent, it's going to be even more niche. It's usually an attorney with a science background. You have to be very careful about even putting things out into the public domain if you want to get a patent, because your patent application can actually be denied, or someone can come and try to contest it and say that you ruined the opportunity to file this patent application because now it's public knowledge. So in the social media age, people love to say, I have this idea, I'm going to do this. Well, don't do that if you want to file a patent application.
That's very interesting. I don't have any ideas of what I can patent. I've thought about it, but I don't. But that's very interesting.
Don't say
Mark,
them here, Kiana. We just
I
learned
won't
that.
say them here. Mark.
I'm definitely glad, because I was going to kind of go down that road as well. I'm glad LaMonica mentioned that, because the biggest misconception that a lot of my clients have is that when you say intellectual property, it's just one thing. But it's really 4 or 5 different kind of aspects of intellectual property. The patent's one thing, and she's entirely correct. If you have a patent or an ID that you think is patentable, you want to find the exact right attorney that does whatever you're going to do. And it's not just one, right? There's some engineering patents that you want to go to a specific attorney. Pharmaceuticals is a completely different patent attorney. And the reason for that is because they're going to understand the science, because she's right, they typically do have a science undergrad, and then they know the way to write the patent application to where it's most likely going to be accepted. And that's a huge deal, because the patent itself, if it's accepted, it can be extremely valuable. So a lot of times when people or companies, small businesses are talking about intellectual property, they're mainly meaning trademarks. And that's your logo, or maybe, a little bit of a trade name, or like a slogan. And those can be, trademarked. But if somebody else, like LaMonica said, if somebody else has already registered it with the USPTO, you got to be a little careful with that. So, I just to reemphasize that there are very different types of intellectual property, and there's different ways to protect each one. And luckily, some get protection as soon as you create them, like in particular copyright. As soon as you write something original, it's copyrighted, whether it's published, whether it's in the Library of Congress, doesn't matter. As long as you can prove it's your original work, then you got a copyright on it.
Okay, great. We're going to move on. We're about halfway through, so we're going to see how many questions we can get through. How do I, as a business owner, minimize my risk? Mark, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I can start with that one. I'll give you my typical answer. It depends. It really depends on what risks that you're talking about. And definitely glad LaMonica mentioned this earlier as well. I always tell clients, your 3 biggest friends from a business owner perspective are your business attorney, your CPA, and your commercial insurance broker. And she gave the great example of, the business owner having one line of business and then doing something completely different. Well, the problem with that is if you don't tell your commercial insurance broker, you might not be covered for whatever that new line is, because it's a different set of actuarial tables, different premium rates, that sort of thing. So to me, the biggest way to minimize risk is to engage those different experts, because that's our job, is to help protect you. And the other way, we kind of mentioned it earlier, is to try and get as much in writing as you possibly can, because that's going to take care of a lot of problems that might happen down the road.
Those are very good points. I know myself, I'm always trying to mitigate risk, and I'm a paranoid person. So I think having specialists are very good. In my particular industry of home care, it's a very hot market for attorneys, and a lot of class action lawsuits and things like that. So as business owners in this particular industry, is something that we're always being advised on. There's certain things that we have to go over continuously, just because we have such a target on our industry. So really understanding your industry and understanding the risk involved, and talking with someone that specializes. LaMonica, you're shaking your head. Would you like to add anything to that?
One thing I think as business owners, and even as attorneys, right, we all own our own firm. So we're business owners, and we're probably very, very good at the practice of law. But then we also realize that we're business owners. So we have staff that we have to train, or we have, other attorneys that we might be working with, or people that we're bringing in. And even though we know what we're supposed to do, that's still a mental shift that we have to think about when we're thinking about what it takes to manage them. So I think developing processes, that's one thing that I've done, is sort of like really develop processes of like, what does it mean to take off from work? What does it mean? What's the process for calling in sick? What's the process for, what you should do on a daily basis? If you feel like you don't have any work right now, what are 10 things that you can do to push this office forward or push our business forward? So I think that those are some of the best things to do, is to create processes and to really write things down so that you can train your employees. That's a huge thing right now. The communication differences between generations is causing a lot of innovation in the workplace, because people have ideas, but it's also causing a lot of gaps, because the thought process around productivity is very different. So I think that communicating those things are very important. And I would also say understanding the difference between an employee and an independent contractor. When most people start, they're bringing on independent contractors and they're not employees, but we like to treat our independent contractors like employees. So just understanding the difference between an employee and an independent contractor.
That is very important. Go ahead, Brian.
I pointed because she couldn't have been more right about that. I see that all the time, where independent contractors are hired and they're treated loosey-goosey in an employee sense, and have policies and procedures and follow them. Do this, just that simple. A friend of mine who's an attorney here in Fort Worth, he makes a living off of, suing companies. And he said the easiest ones to go after are the oil and gas companies, where a couple of bubbas from West Texas get started in a business. And even though they're big and they should have policies and procedures in place and they should be following those, they don't. They treat it very loosey-goosey, and it's a dangerous area to get into. So I just couldn't agree more with her.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to just illustrate, and I know we got to move on, policies and procedures. I just did a whole lecture last week about the importance of having policies and procedures. So you want to develop that early on in your business versus later on. Like, we're doing a whole revamp of our policies and procedures. And then illustrate something that both LaMonica and Brian talked about. In our industry, there's a lot of that where people might hire as independent contractor. It's very hard to justify it in our industry as having an independent contractor. And there's one agency now in the US that got in trouble with the law for that. And now they're having to back pay thousands of dollars because by them having them set as independent contractor, it was bypassing the overtime laws. And so they got in trouble. Again, pay now or pay later. Make sure you understand what you're doing. Okay, so I'm going to move on to, is there anything in particular I need to be concerned about when firing an employee? And especially here in Texas, with Texas being an at-will state. We'd like to speak on that. Mark?
I'll go. The answer is yes. No, so I'm tongue in cheek, obviously. It and again depends on the facts of your business. The biggest factor as far as risk of firing an employee is the number of employees you have and whether a lot of those Title VII protected classes are going to kind of kick in. If you have over 15 full-time employees, then you're more at risk when you're firing an employee. Just because if there's any sort of inclination that it's based on race, sex, religion, national origin, that sort of thing, then you're definitely more at risk. For lower, if you have fewer employees, then there still are risks. And my advice is always, of course, I've done a lot of HR stuff. I was actually certified in HR for a little while. Document everything. If you have the thought that eventually you might have to get rid of an employee, then you need to make sure that your file is papered. And I say papered, that hopefully doesn't sound as bad as it comes out. You just need to have the documentation that shows that you're firing that employee for cause. And the reason for that is you don't want the claim on your unemployment insurance. It's going to go to the TWC. Chances are the employee is going to file for unemployment. And you want to show the Texas Workforce Commission that, hey, I fired them for cause because they didn't do X, Y, and Z, or they were late, 12 times, something like that. So those are kind of the biggest risks that you might run. Beyond that, I mean, Texas is an at-will state. So really, unless it's for one of those protected reasons, you can fire an employee for wearing shoes that you don't like.
Yes, it is an at-will state, but we also know here in America, everybody sues for everything. So you definitely need to protect yourself. Brian, would you like to make any comments on that?
Just to piggyback, yeah, even though it's an at-will state, you don't necessarily always have to have a good reason to fire someone, but you can't do it for a bad one. And I couldn't agree more on document, because when you have that TWC hearing, it's going to happen often. You're really, every time, if you have cause, it's always better to let somebody go with cause. Just if you can, if it exists, always better for your business, period.
Yeah, I've been on those meetings, those hearings, they're pretty intense. You've got to have your documentation. We have a lot of high turnover in the industry that I'm in, just universally. We document every day because it's very, very important. We're very conscious of that. LaMonica?
So this is definitely not my area of expertise. So I defer to Mark and Brian on everything legal related in regards to termination. But from a procedural and safety point of view, I'm going to say that you need to be sure that you get everything back, meaning any keys that you might have, any equipment that your staff might have. Also, if you're in a small office, I'm in a small office, everyone, we have to change our passwords. We have to change the alarm code if someone leaves. And those are just things that, I recommend from a safety point of view. Another thing that I want to talk about, and Mark, you can probably give the specifics on this. You cannot withhold someone's paycheck for equipment unless they actually sign off specifically in the employment agreement stating that they agree to that. And you can probably talk a bit more about that. But a lot of times people will say, well, I'm not going to give them their paycheck until they bring the laptop back. And I don't believe that you can do that in the state of Texas.
It's funny that you say that specifically, because that's exactly what I was going to follow up with after you said that. Yeah, Texas Payday Law says you can only withhold pay from an employee if it's for some sort of statutory reason. And the biggest examples of that are child support or taxes, or if there's a written agreement with the employee. So my recommendation for clients that if they're going to issue equipment to an employee, like a laptop or a cell phone or whatever, is that they have a written agreement that says you can deduct the value of whatever that equipment is from their last paycheck. And that is a pretty good incentive most of the time for the employee to return that stuff. So the other thing is too, Texas Payday Law is, depending on how the employee separates from the company, if they resign, then you can pay them on the next regular payday. If it's a termination, then, and I can't remember, 7 days.
6 days.
6 days, yeah. I always forget that. I always have to look it up. But yeah, so you have to pay them within 6 days of the termination date. So that's another factor. A lot of times, if you're terminating them, you're probably going to be walking them out the door anyway. So my recommendation is just have their check ready and give it to them on the way out.
Great. So we want to ask our last question because we went over a lot of things and we're coming up on our hour here. So all of these topics, we can spend a whole hour on each of those topics. So again, our recommendation, if you're a startup or just growing your business, definitely want to get with a business attorney. If it's very, very specific, you want to get with a specialist. Now, I'm a business, I'm a small business, I'm a new business. How much does all of this cost? Many people have that question and that deters them from using attorney. So would y'all like to talk about just kind of like a general summary? Brian, you're thinking?
Well, I hate to do this, but it's going to be it depends, because a lot of it depends on, there's a lot of leeway given to attorneys on how much they can charge, and we're kind of we're supposed to police ourselves, but there are certain, for example, Houston area and the greater Dallas area, an attorney there who does IP work may bill up to $1,000 an hour in some cases. Whereas if you're just needing a company agreement, well, that's going to be a transactional fee. It's probably going to be a flat fee. But if you're in Lubbock, for example, and you're dealing with mom and pop businesses, you might be charging $250 an hour. I will say that all attorneys, and we're better at this, and I'm glad we are, should be upfront with you on how much we're going to charge. My fee agreement should tell you to the letter what I will charge. There shouldn't be any hidden mysteries. You're not going to meet with an attorney and then down the road go, wait, I've been hoodwinked for X amount of dollars. We don't work that way. So as far as how much we bill, that's going to vary from situation to situation and from lawyer to lawyer, but we will all be, or should all be, upfront with you, the potential client, on what we're going to charge so that you know what you're getting into.
Great. Would anybody else like to add to that?
So I'll just add a little bit and totally agree with what Brian said. It really depends. And a lot of times with my clients, it depends on how long-term the engagement is going to be, and just the type of work that the client expects. Sometimes if I've been engaged by a client on an hourly rate for a while and the work is steady, I'll recommend, hey, why don't you just pay me a flat retainer per month, and then however much I work, that's however much I work. Sometimes that works out. It really depends on the client. I would say, and I hate to put, parameters on it necessarily, but Brian was pretty dead on that an attorney that was representing small and medium-sized businesses probably going to charge by the hour, and it's probably going to be somewhere between $200 and $350 an hour. And that's, to me, pretty standard rate. The Texas Bar, and you guys can correct me, I don't know if they've done one in a while, but they'll do a survey of what rates different types of attorneys charge. And that's usually kind of the ballpark for business attorneys. So, but again, like he said, depending on whether you need a really specialized person or You know, the big firms that work in downtown Houston or downtown Dallas, a lot of those lawyers are going to be more 4 digits per hour as opposed to 3 digits.
And the
So-
thing I like about having local attorneys is then it makes it more accessible, because my idea of attorneys before starting to hire some is just all these big old firms and they charge all this amount. But because of my networking, I'm able to meet people like you, Mark, and LaMonica and Bross and Shobi introducing me to Legal Shield, so that I have and can access and can afford legal protections for my businesses. So that's very good.
May I
Okay.
add something to that, Kiana, as well, just really quick? I would add that I definitely see a lot of businesses that are forming or in the beginning stages or a few years in that are afraid of the pricing, kind of like what you said, the pricing around legal, getting a lawyer. The thing that I would say is incremental growth as well. So if you speak to a lawyer and you have a session with a lawyer, you don't know what you don't know. So you probably don't even know the risk that you're exposed to. So if you can start somewhere and start working with an attorney, you don't have to do everything at once, but being aware and bringing awareness to it and saying, okay, I'm going to budget for this. I have a plan, I have a business plan, and I have a budget for these things that I need to do that perhaps I can't do right now. Kiana did say you pay now or you pay later, but later is always more. Double, triple,
Always more.
quadruple. So
I have done it always more.
right. So you might as well prepare now for maybe I have to live in this risk for a little while, but in 6 months from now, I'm able to engage the attorney about this next thing and this next thing. So I would just encourage that conversation to begin.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Cheryl, can you make sure their information gets put up on Facebook? Because I know people may want to contact them. Definitely some great information that was shared. Again, we know you get paid for your time and you volunteered your time for today. So we are very, very much appreciative. We do want to remind everyone that our next meeting, we have it the third Friday of every month. So the next meeting, I believe, is going to be on the 16th of April. So it's the third Friday. Our next topic will be proactive taxation. And so we're going to have a discussion on that and why we need to focus on that at the beginning of the year versus at the end of the year, so that we can plan things accordingly for our business. Okay, and I think that is it. We don't have any additional upcoming business or events to cover. So is there anything else we need to mention before we adjourn here?
I would just say, if anyone else, we are drawing up right now the entire year of topics. So if you do have topics, please share with us. We asked that last time, but I would just encourage to hear the voices of Pearland and the surrounding communities of what's on the stage here.
Yeah, and if you, we have some tentative topics, I'll go over them just briefly. We have branding and PR, HR panel discussion on compliance, training and development, recruiting and retention, understanding the difference between sales and marketing, business owner, employee health and wellness, finance, wealth development, business and personal, philanthropy and community impact, and then business planning, success and numbers. So we are still looking for speakers on those topics. So if you guys know anyone, definitely send them our way. And we want to give you your Friday back. We hope everyone have a great weekend and be safe. Thank you so much.
Everybody.